All right.
Sorry.
Welcome to another episode of the High Ground Podcast. We had the Acolyte episode 4 drop, and we got some thoughts. I have a new guest. This is my first time bringing you on one of these. We've only met once before, but go ahead and introduce yourself, where we can find you, and all your content, and what do you talk about?
All right. Well, I am Sensei Faneto, aka Vane Sensei, and I am the host of a YouTube channel called Marvel Bros. We do trailer reactions, watch parties, all that type of stuff. And that's basically the gist of it. You know what I mean? You can find me on social media at Sensei Faneto, and then you can find Marvel Bros at Marvel Bros, MRVL, and then Bros after that.
Awesome. All right. I appreciate coming on. Yeah, so we were part of an interesting conversation on the Acolyte when it came to, episode number 3 that our good friend Josh Mesa Windu was hosting. And, I just saw fellow fan. There's some funny bits, but anyways, that's old
Yeah.
news. And with the new episode 4 dropped. So real quick, episodes 1 through 3, where are you kind of at with the series? You liking it? You're disliking it? What do you think?
Well, when it comes to the series, right, when it comes to Star Wars in general and any content that I partake in, I always try to go in with high expectations and an open mind, right? Like I always try to have an open mind because every creator is different. So far into this show, I had a really good time. I'm not going to lie. I actually liked it a lot more than I thought I would in the first 2 episodes. And then episode 3, there was of course some cringe moments in that episode, but what is Star Wars without a little cringe, right? I think that's safe to say. But there was an immediate backlash that I don't think I was ready for it to be so severe this time around as it has been, as like all the other times that we've been in this spot. And we have been in this spot a lot with Star Wars.
Yeah.
Episodes 1 through 3 they were really solid, and I did enjoy them for what they were.
Okay, nice. It's funny you say that because we were talking about how bad it is. And this is not a political channel or anything like that, but I will say the last time I felt this level of backlash was 4 years ago. I'm just saying that I feel like there's a link there, but yeah, episode 4 we got last night. What did you think about it overall?
Actually, episode 4 was it flipped the script for me, right? Like I think the only time I felt the way I felt with watching really this whole season, right, is in the last season of The Mandalorian. I think we had a lot of questions in that first half of the season of The Mandalorian, and then all of a sudden we had every single question answered within like the first 2 episodes that we had, right? And it was kind of the same thing with this. It was like every time we thought we had a question, they gave us an answer. And then this episode, instead of giving us answers, it raised completely different questions for where we thought it was going to go. I am not a fan of how abrupt this show ends by any means. Like that, it really makes me, I'm not going to lie, I low-key raged a little bit last night when watching it because it's like, no way at this part you end it. That was just, that was insane. But overall, I think they did a good job, yo.
The massive anime fan myself,
Yeah,
I'm used to this type of ending. You know what I mean? Like, listen, I'm watching Kaiju number 8 right now, and every episode, you're just like, God damn it. You can't end there. Really?
Yeah.
So for me with this episode, episode number 4, I have to say, I mean, I do agree with you. This flipped a lot of scripts, and like I've had people tell me this show it's boring and predictable. I'm like, you didn't predict nothing. Ain't no way.
Anything.
Ain't no way. Stop lying to yourself. Stop lying to me.
Stop lying. Stop the cap.
But I will say overall, this episode was probably my least favorite. However,
okay.
It at the end provided the most hype.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So like as we're watching through the episodes, there was a few places where I felt like line delivery wasn't where it should be, and it's something I feel like has been a problem throughout the series. I feel like they start their line at a good place and then it ends flat. It's like a singer who like goes flat when they're holding a note. And so there's been a few scenes like that that have kind of like taken me out of it. But this episode, other than that, it gave us a lot of breadcrumbs that have powerful implications. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I agree with you though. I think that at least when it comes to a lot of the dialogue in this show, they do take a lot of uh liberties to hold your hand a little bit too much. And I think it's really, I can't think of what the terminology for it is, but it's like they go back and voiceover basically a lot of lines to kind of give you a lot of
Mm,
more context with what's going on in the show. Like sometimes you can look at a character and you can clearly see they're not saying the thing that you hear, but they have to put it in there to kind of hold some of those hands that aren't getting what's kind of being showed to them. And I think that might have been like in a test screening or something where people were like, wait, so what's kind of going on here? Like, don't forget, she is a Jedi. You know, like those little comments that Soul makes here and
yeah,
there. It's very forced because
maybe
it's kind of hand holding. And I think that's
maybe
purposeful.
maybe
But
that's what it is. Because
if
it like it could be a line that you wouldn't say naturally because
yeah,
it's assumed
yes, I
it's
think
an
Soul
unsaid
says it
thing.
to Vernestres in one of the episodes, like our political enemies will try to use this against us, and it's like you don't need to say that necessarily if you
Yeah,
know that this is what's gonna happen. You know, like that's not necessarily how a conversation would go naturally, but it's something that they're saying. I feel to kind of build up the story just a little bit more for those who don't really understand it, and I think it's safe to say a lot of people have been kind of like not understanding what the writing is, being mad that they don't know what's going on. And then it's like, it's a mystery. You're not supposed to. There are a lot of things that kind of contradict themselves here. So I think it's going to be, I think they have done a good job of setting up this first half of the season. Like we are officially at the halfway point now.
yeah.
We got 4 more episodes. Hopefully they don't have to hold our hands as much with what's going on, and I think I heard someone say it too. It's a spoon-fed mystery. It doesn't leave a lot of, like it's like, oh, can I fill in these gaps here? No, it's gonna tell you the answer when it's time to know the answer. But until then, you're just gonna be completely confused. So I hope it's not like that for the rest of the time, you know.
Well, I do feel like they've done a really good job of paying attention to the small details so that we can know things. I mean, even
Yes.
starting in the first episode when you're like, it's a little girl running in the snow, but you notice she's not leaving any footprints. And then you're
Yes.
like, okay, so this is not something that's actually happening. It's a small detail that if you
Yes.
notice it, it adds to it. If you don't notice it, then it's
It doesn't
whatever.
really do too much.
Yeah, but I like how you made mention of that line of like our political enemies will use it against us. I actually really
Mm-hmm.
liked how it was used here because I was actually a little turned off at Vernestra before because I'm a big High
Mm.
Republic fan. Right. So I've
Yeah.
been following Vernestra's story since, before the pandemic started,
And it's very different
and
now.
it seems very different until this episode. Now it makes
Mm.
sense because
Okay.
she sees the recording of the fight and says that person was trained by a Jedi. If we tell the High Council, then they'll
It's
have to let them
better.
know. And yeah, it makes sense that their political enemies would be like, see, there's rogue Jedi out here doing all this stuff. I could see that being used against them and creating more issues. So I can see that one. There's been some discourse surrounding Kiari Mundi's appearance. I'm curious,
Man,
where do you stand on this?
look, I stem from like a lot of Marvel stuff, right? So when it comes to canon, I understand canon can be insane and wild because if Marvel has done anything, it's everything, and it's always somehow tried to make everything
You
canon
know,
at some point as well. You know what I mean? Through the multiverse or through something, right? So when you have a continuity as large as Star Wars, you're gonna have some hiccups here and there. For one, right? Today I just found out, like I didn't even know about what is his name? What's their name? The lore, like the person that keeps the lore Bible, the keeper of the holocron, right? I
okay,
just now
like
I
Leland Chi
Yeah, Leland Shi or
yeah,
something
Leland
like
Chi.
that. Yeah. See, I didn't know about any of that stuff that they have as far as the Star Wars database goes. So to like maybe yesterday I kind of went in depth, you know, because if I don't know something, I'm gonna research it so I can talk about it. I'm not just gonna talk without knowing a little bit of something. So when I started researching and looking into everything of who he is and what was going on, I'm like, yo, there is so much Star Wars lore that it's going to be very hard to keep everybody happy when you're trying to have it be cohesive. And as far as breaking canon goes, EU breaks its own canon all the time. So it's like to even
Yeah.
talk about this breaking canon that's connected to the EU, like his whole age thing is all EU content in the first place. So it's like, what conversation are we even gonna have here? Like, we got to talk canon or we got to talk EU. We have to know what we're talking about. And either way,
Yeah.
canon is a featherweight, low key, in Star Wars. That's just what it is. Like,
Well, I mean, I also err on the side of we shouldn't let canon get in the way of something being good or good stories or good storytelling. But that being said, it doesn't break canon at all. So it's weird. When I look at, because I'm a big fan of the expanded universe. You know, I mean, I've read
yeah, it's amazing.
over 100 books at this point in time.
Oof.
And
I ain't there, buddy. I'll let you know that quick.
Well, so the way I liken it, what I liken it to is it's like you grew up on the X-Men Marvel franchise from Fox, and then the MCU starts, and what happened on the X-Men stuff is not canon to what happens in the MCU.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's literally the exact same thing. That's like being like, well, they changed this character's, Quicksilver looks different here, and you're like, that's in the Fox movies. It's not the same. That's the 100% the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And not to mention that even in its own continuity, it also has the same issues. Like, you remember the end of Return of the Jedi, how it used to be before the special editions?
No, I don't.
Before they put because when they had the Force Ghost at the end, now it's Hayden Christensen there, right?
Oh yes, yeah.
It didn't used to be, right? It used to be his name was Sebastian Shaw, and he's
this is when they did like all the CGI updates and stuff, right? With like Jabba the Hutt and all of this other stuff, right? Is that what you're talking about? And like putting in the shoot first stuff for Han Solo and all of those little tiny things. Like all those little CGI things that I hear people. I've heard the complaints about that. I don't know in depth about it. I don't know in depth about it, but I know what you're talking about with adding Hayden Christensen in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just another one of the many things that they change is when George came out with the prequels, he changed Anakin's age, right? So like the end of Return of the Jedi didn't make any sense because you're like, that old guy is supposed to be 45. He's 45 right now. You're like, are you serious? It's like, what are we talking? And same people. I just want to say, Ray Skywalker. I want him to have a conniption fit, and you're like, I thought you cared so much about canon. That's her name in canon, right? I don't know.
Like, what do we do here? Where do we pick up? That's the thing. There's a lot of nitpicking and cherry picking going on at the same time. You know, it's like, well, I don't like that this is doing this thing, but I want that to do this thing over here. I don't want that to be canon here, but I do want that to be canon here. And I think that's one of the main reasons why there is a keeper of the holocron that has it's like, you know, in the first place, is because that's what was going on. Because before it was that person, it was just George Lucas like picking and choosing, like, okay, that just one is and that one's not, and that one is and that one's not. Like, come on, like, how do we really do this? And something that Brandon Sanderson says, you know, I don't know if a lot of people know who he is. He's a writer, he writes books, all this other stuff. But when it comes to storytelling, or
just started Way of Kings.
Okay, so you're gonna get into it. But you know, he says that you want to lean on the side of awesome for most things. You know, like, you're gonna want to do this, you're gonna want to do that, and you don't want to drive yourself crazy with trying to stick to all of these itty bitty teeny things, because then you end up putting yourself in a box creatively. So when you lean on the side of awesome, that's when awesome things happen. And I feel
Yeah.
like George Lucas is the king of leaning on the side of awesome. You know what I mean? Like he's going to change something really quick just for the sake of
You mean he didn't intend for his main character to be in a love triangle with his
it.
sister? Really?
I
No.
promise it wasn't like that before, you know. And then you got, I mean, even the creation of Ahsoka, right? A lot of people will say, oh well, that's not retconning because it happened in the writers' room. It's like, well, hello, it didn't happen before. Yeah, in the writers' room is where it was retconned. Actually, that's when the retcon happened, in the writers' room. I'm happy we can get on the same page here. But you know, it just
I
be like
remember the
that.
hate for that decision as well. Like he didn't have a Padawan. He doesn't talk about Ahsoka and Revenge of the Sith. And you know,
You
like
know,
yeah, it's. I mean,
you're right. He doesn't.
he couldn't. It'd be weird if he did. Yeah. But so going back to the episode,
Yeah.
I feel bad
Oh,
for Kilnaka crew. You know, everyone who's
I'm not gonna lie. I was crushed. I was like, because I was doing the watch party on YouTube, and my chat was like, "My God, is Kelnaka dead?" And I was like, "Don't say that. Like, don't say this, please." And then you just see his
yeah. Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
he
what do
he
you
had a
think
bad day.
about him drawing all of the spiral designs that Mother Anasea had on her, tattooed on her forehead? Because those are the same symbols. Like, what do you
Yeah,
think that leads into?
I mean that had to be. So one thing you notice is that the big sign that was above his thing was missing. The sign that said "keep out."
The keep out sign,
Um,
yeah.
so like I'm wondering, is this a similar thing as Torben, where because
Mm,
what's his name said he went there before to track him down, and
yeah.
maybe he knew his death was coming, and he was ready
Mm.
for it. I'm trying to
Oh,
remember in the
okay.
scene. Was he wearing clothes? Because he
Nah,
walked around.
that's what Yord had to give the sniffer in order to find him. He had Telnaka's like
That's right.
Jedi
That's right.
robes. And something else is, we didn't see Kelnaka at the end of the third episode after they get May and they're on the spaceship. He's not there. So I don't know if we don't see him, and I think that's when Torben now has
He has
the
he had the
slash on his
scar.
eye and
Yeah.
stuff. So it's like, bro, I don't know if that's where he left at, but if it is so, I'm interested in knowing where they go next. Because what I thought was gonna happen was Kelnaka, Osha, and May were gonna all like see each other, and the fact that he's been having some type of visions, drawing these signs, was gonna like kind of connect them or something, and they were gonna get some crazy force download. I don't know, like have another vision or something. That's because she's had a couple visions now. I thought we was gonna have another vision about something. But no, he's dead, and I think everybody's gonna die. Actually,
Listen, I was hoping that we were gonna see May fight a big Wookiee like with her knives, and
yes.
like just stab him. Is like, yeah, that ain't gonna do it.
Sink, just like that would have been crazy.
She's gonna need them to climb up him.
Yeah, exactly. For real.
So I'm a little disappointed I didn't get to see that, but I thought the May's walk over there with Quimera was interesting because first of all, that guy is shifty as hell. He knows too much. But I like how he's like, you know what, finding out your sister doesn't change anything, and she's like, wait a second, that's the whole reason I'm doing any of this.
Like this changes everything.
What are you talking about? I guess I'm not bad anymore. Which is something I actually appreciated because I hate when movies where the whole impetus for the action has been removed and they're like, I don't care anymore.
Still gonna keep
doing
on
it.
checking.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, now you're evil. It's like now you're actually evil. Before it was like, oh, I can kind of sympathize with you because your family was dead and you were going on a murder mission, but now your sister's here. It should change. That should change something. You're going on a revenge tour for your dead sister. You see her alive. That should now change your revenge tour.
And like happy and thriving. And you
she's chilling. Like,
what have I been doing for the last 6 years?
Legit though.
No,
that's a good, yeah.
so I'm excited because what I feel pretty confident is going to happen is now we're going to get a swap, right? We're going to get May, and she's going to be with all the Jedi, and we're going to lose Osha. She's going to be with Darth
Man,
Teeth, as we
let me
call him. Do you
tell
think it's
you,
Chimer?
Darth Teeth. That's a good name. I've been calling him the Sith Stranger this whole time, but Darth Teeth is a good name. But
People call him Darth Teeth or Smilo Ren.
really like that one. I see the thing. This is my thing with all of that, right? Because first, I just want to say I really thought Osha was gonna die. Like I thought Darth Teeth was going to murder her, and I was like, oh, they're about to flip the script again, and now it's gonna be like you said, it's gonna be May that's gonna have to, be with the Jedi this whole time, and now they're not gonna trust her. And they're actually going to have even more of a reason to not trust her than they did May and all this stuff. But then he just flicked her to the side real quick, and then I just started rolling how her body went ragdoll.
So I didn't think she was gonna die, but now that you mention it, it did feel a little bit like Jedi Fallen Order, the end, where she's like, it, and then Vader comes down, and
yes,
like,
sir.
Yeah, it did feel a little bit like that scene.
Yeah, Star Wars. Again, lean on the side of awesome for a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, because him just flicking her out the way was crazy. But I think that Quimera could be Smilo Ren. I think that is a very big possibility. But I also kind of feel like there might be a little bit of relation between Smilo Ren or Quimera and Soul, because for some reason I feel like they had something going on. Like when you watch them, even when he comes into the store that first time, right? He looks at him, and then it just all feels so weird. How easily he trusts him to kind of be a double agent. It just all feels a lot like those could be things that they just put there, but it also seems a little bit purposeful. And then in this last episode, there you go.
Thank you about that. You're about to say he dropped the line. It's like she seems to be really close to that one guy. What's his name? Soul?
It's like, how the hell do you know that? Yeah, and it just seems so weird. I don't know. It just I get a weird vibe from it. And I would be okay with Quimera being Smilo Ren, but at the same time, I feel like it's so obvious, and everything that we have seen that is an obvious thing in this show has not came to fruition by any means. Yeah. Like, they have completely finessed it. Like, we might find Quimera in the next episode and he's dead. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we never know what's going to happen with this show.
So my tinfoil hat since the beginning has actually been that it's Torben. The Jedi who died in the second episode. Did he actually die? So I've been saying, I immediately recognized the poison. He's powerful and all this stuff. What if, because we don't know how often their training is or how much time they spend together. What if half the time he's sitting there in that trance, just projecting onto another location to like say things, or who's to say he can't? Go out and then project himself chilling back home.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's my crazy tinfoil hat thing. There is another theory I've been hearing, and that what if it's the mask? What if it's the helmet that is it?
Yes.
So in the comics, we had Darth Moment, right? That was a helmet that you put on, and it possesses the user, and it was on a mission to try and bring himself back. We also saw that again in a book called Shadows of the Sith, where it was another dark side user, where you put on the helmet. It was put on a girl named Kiza, who was Force sensitive, and it was also trying to figure out how to bring itself back. What if all of this, what if what the witches are doing and all that stuff, the machine there is just something meant to help bring this person back, and whoever the daughter ended up being was going to be the vessel for the help, the next person to wear it.
That I think there's a lot of validity to that. That's exactly, literally, I was thinking Dr. Fate. I was 100% on Dr. Fate in my brain, and that sounds very plausible, and I think there's a lot of validity to that too. There could be a lot of validity to that because if it is Quimera, it would make sense as to why he is so different when he has the helmet on from when he's not as well. Like that could
Yeah.
be a really interesting thing. There's so many theories behind this Sith Stranger. And for all we know, we might see him die in the next episode, like in Ahsoka, right? Because in Ahsoka, it was just Dathomirian magic that had that Sith user, that
Oh yeah,
Jedi
he's
or
just a
lightsaber user.
fart in a
He was
suit.
just
This that was
exactly,
like,
exactly. And that could be something again going on here. I think the thing that I like one of the best theories that I think makes a lot of sense is them being some type of Sith cult for sure, like the witches of that
yeah.
planet. What is that planet called? I can't think of it for right now. I don't know. It's like
Oh
right there.
yeah.
It was like right there.
Like,
But yeah, that the witches, them, because they don't have a name yet. I don't think we've heard a name for them, for that sect of,
no,
or their
not a
coven or
specific one.
nothing. They're just the twin witches, the Twitches coven. We can call it that. How about that? But I think they could be a really good way to kind of jump into. The Sith have been trying to do this forever. Like this is exactly what the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise was talking about, or just do something ridiculous like that. I don't think that's what's gonna happen, like for real, but I could see that going that way, because everything about Star Wars it's always gonna end with somehow Palpatine returns. You know what I mean? Like that is the story that they have to tell from here, like for everything. And I would not be surprised if this tells the other side of that story, right? Because there is one side that we've been getting told to us throughout the entirety of the Mandoverse, and that's the cloning. And then there's a completely different side of that, which we are now kind of getting told, which we could be getting told to us, which is the Immaculate Conception side, the force sensitive child being born purposefully, though, like, because up until this point, it's basically hit and miss for a force sensitive child. You don't know. Two force sensitive parents may not have a force sensitive child, or they may have one of the most force sensitive childs. It's not a written in stone. It's like My Hero
it's more like,
Academia with getting their quirk. It's
yeah.
like you got the pinky toe or you don't. You know what I mean?
Which I always laugh about My Hero Academia, because like you could be a normal kid, and then like you hit like puberty and you get your quirk, and then you just have a cat head. Like he's just a cat
That's
now. Like,
that's true.
I don't know
Whole
what the
life
power
has
is.
changed. You can lap milk now.
Yeah. My favorite character just got a bird head for no reason, so but it's
Which
cool.
is awesome. It works. Lean on the side of awesome, bro. That's what I'm saying. It works. It works.
I agree. And also I feel like this has always been throughout all of Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you turn on A New Hope, and honestly, Luke's line delivery is bizarre.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
We just have a lot of camp and a lot of humor. They joked. I remember that they joked that R2D2 was a lesbian, but like the joke that R2D2 and C3PO are a gay couple is not new. That's been around. I remember The Simpsons laughing about that in like '96. You know what I mean?
For real.
Like,
and that's a good point too. I was just thinking about that. Family Guy and all of the stuff that they did with Star Wars. Something dark side. something Sith Lord. Like people have always been making fun of the cringe that is in Star Wars, because I say it all the time, Star Wars is 50% politics, and then you got about 30% of 50% space opera, 30% politics, and then you got 20% cringe. Because that 20% cringe is awesome. The cringe doesn't hurt anything. It's good, man. And especially when you always think about it's for kids, like this stuff is some, even though they're trying to jump out of it being for the kids only, they're trying to jump out of that now. But I don't know if that's ever been a thought process for them before, ever. Like for anybody that's ever worked on Star Wars. Like, so there's just a lot to it, man. I think it just gets really hard when you get people that want to create their own canon out of something that has its own canon established in both legends and both, actual, like what the movies and the shows are and all of these, because there's a reason why they did all of this. because there is not another franchise form of media, nothing out there in like literally nothing where every single piece of medium is canon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Comic books, novels, video games, movies, television, live action, animation alike, even literal children baby shows. Like, you know what I mean? Even that is canon. Like that's
Mobile
wild.
video games.
But
Mobile
like
video
everything,
games.
yo.
The game Star Wars Hunters, right? Where the 4v4 arena
Oh yeah,
thing,
huh?
that has a book, right? You can read about those people. That is
I didn't know that.
essentially what that is a Star Wars WWE. And those are all just personas, and then they go out and they fight each other, and then after they're done, they go out and get drinks and stuff. Like,
Oh my
but yeah,
goodness.
that's a
So
whole story
Apex,
in there.
it's like Apex Legends, but just Star
Yeah.
Wars. That's actually kind of awesome. I want to know more, I want to know more about that. But you don't get that level of crossover, I guess you can say, without, it's not even crossover, it's just continuity. You don't get that level of continuity without sacrifices. It's unfortunate, but that's just how it is. You know what I mean? There has to be a starting point and there has to be an end point, and something has to be definitive about it. So when you do have those fans that want to go super hard and in depth with everything that is lore, they can do that and actually know what is here and what is over there. And I don't feel like there's anything wrong with that, because that's how everything is everywhere.
Well, I mean, how how I feel with it, because all of the super like really deep lore fans, because that I'm one of them. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, I know. 100 books in, baby boy. I heard you.
That's only Legends. I'm caught up on canon as well. So
you're caught up on canon.
I am missing some comics and stuff. But
Yo,
for the
I
books,
just now found
yeah.
out that there was so much like I didn't know that how much High Republic canon content there was. Just found out when this whole Acolyte stuff started, and I was like, Jesus.
I'm halfway through Temptation of the Force, but I mean,
Okay.
give me some slack. That dropped last week.
No,
all right?
yeah. Isn't there like 3 phases of Star Wars?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's. Bro, I don't think I'm ever gonna be that caught up.
Well, but what I find is the people who are that deep into it actually really enjoy the Acolyte, right? It's only it's only the step underneath that where a lot of the thoughts are coming from the same spots on YouTube that you run into these issues, because you know if there's certain like content creators who don't like canon, right? Don't like things since Disney took over, so they don't read those books, they don't read those comics, they don't like the High Republic, they're not interested in it, and then the High Republic canon show comes out and they're surprised that they don't know what's going on, and you're like, are you dumb? I don't know.
If you want to know, it's one of those, you know what I mean? Like, read these. Like, here's all these books, or there's all these anythings, you know, like anything that you can, yeah. And it's very interesting, man. It's very interesting. Because I like when watching the show, I'm like watching the show, and everything that I think, I'm like watching it and I get a new piece of information. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, that's cool. Maybe I didn't know that before, or hey, that's interesting. Or I'm just like, that didn't hit as well with me, but I'm just watching the show for what it is regardless. Like, that's what it's all about. And I saw the video you did about how the kind of like, the binge method is kind of more the way to go now, rather than doing the episodic release. And I saw someone else kind of talking about it too. And I think the episodic release schedule is hurting fandom a lot more than it's doing it any good, because it's week after week of just people who aren't even watching the show.
Grueling.
They're not even watching it. And they're just seeing a clip of something happening. Like, I saw someone just literally clip the Sith Stranger just gliding down, and they were like, what is this? This is so. And I'm like, literally after that is one of the dopest moments that we ever seen in the show yet. And it's like, well, like, we just nitpick, man. I can't handle it. I can't.
Yeah. Well, okay. So with outside of Star Wars, I know you have the Marvel Bros. What all are you into, and how did you get started with that?
Well, I've always been a nerd of some kind, but for a long time in my life, I wasn't like reading a whole bunch of comics or doing this or doing that. So once I got the opportunity to, you know what I mean? Because my mom was very strict and very religious. So once I got the chance to really like soak
Mm-hmm.
up all of this other stuff that was out there, I took it and I just kind of ran with it. And the MCU, I remember that's like the Incredible Hulk is one of the first movies that I saw like in theaters as being like, oh, this is
Okay.
amazing, you know what I mean? And then after seeing that movie and then realizing that the like Iron Man was in it and then all this, it was just a whole feeling of just like, oh, yo, I'm actually a part of this, this thing, because I wasn't able to be part of like the comic releases or whatever. So that
Yeah.
sparked something like for real. So I just kind of dove headfirst into everything comics. Like I just watched everything that Comics Explained had. Listened to a lot of Comic Historian, RIP. And that's
Rest in peace, Benny. Yeah.
a lot of that gave me the drive to want to do a lot more with everything else. And then at first it started with me and some other friends. We were all doing the Marvel Bros thing together. Like we would go and watch the movie, talk about it or whatever, talk about trailers or whatever the case may be. And then slowly, life is life. And then it was just me. So, and then I was like, I'm still a nerd, so I'm gonna just keep on going. Trailer reactions, watch parties, all of it. I just try to get all, like I say, I cover all things Marvel and everything pop culture, because that's kind of what it is all about, So that's kind of what got me into all of that jazz. And then I just kind of became a lore junkie with everything. My watch parties led me to more and more. I started trying to write my own stories and all this,
Oh,
and that
that's
led
sick.
me to find Brandon Sanderson and all these other things, because he's made like a lot of his courses that he's done at colleges like available online for people to watch and actually like take his course basically. So I watched a lot of his stuff, and then I just kind of continued to read. I got into, book club from watch parties, and just everything kind of hit the next thing, you know what I mean? It was like, oh, this new show is coming out on Prime Video, The Wheel of Time, and then I do a trailer reaction for it. The entire Wheel of Time fan base shows up, and they're like, yo, there is so much more that you have no idea about. Then I watched the show, the first season, the second season, read the
Okay,
books,
but there's
like it's so
there's like a
much.
lot of Wheel of Time books, and
Yeah,
I
there's 14 books, I think, in that story. And I just finished book 2, and it's magnificent. It's just,
awesome.
again, it's so funny it's funny for me to watch, to read so many other things and see the inspiration that it gave to other people. You know what I mean? Like inspiration. I mean, even in this show, The Acolyte, like the little dude that sniffs, like there is an entire character just like that in the Wheel of Time, whose job is the same exact thing to sniff. And it's like, you just see a lot of these things kind of just ripple out in other ways, because guess what? That's what people were reading when they were younger too. And then it gave them
Yeah.
inspiration to want to create more stuff as well, because that's
Well,
how it works.
I mean, that's like George Lucas is famous for wanting to. I mean, that's literally how Star Wars got started. And when you, because I've been doing a lot of research on like the behind the scenes of the making
Mm.
of Star Wars, and so yeah, I mean, we know that he was really, deeply influenced by the samurai films and like Kurosawa and stuff. And like his first draft was literally just a rip off of Hidden
Just a
Fortress,
samurai.
just a one to one. But his writing process was literally him locking himself in the room, like him going and getting a bunch of books and comics and movies and locking himself in a room and reading them and then taking stuff out of them. So like when people watched Star Wars for the first time back in the day, one of the reasons they loved it was because it had so many elements from the stories that they loved. We had stuff from Dune in there. It had stuff from the John Carter series in there. It had stuff
Okay.
from Fourth World
Oh,
influence and stuff in there. It had stuff from
what's the
there's a
other
book series
one?
called Lensman. that
Foundation.
I didn't
I
read,
think
but
Foundation was a little bit in there too, maybe.
Foundation, absolute. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
the Coruscant, the planet was directly ripped off of Foundation.
Oh,
It wasn't
what?
named Coruscant at the time. It was named Abaddon. But
Oh,
yeah, that was directly ripped off from Foundation.
Abaddon is a
As
badass name. I just wanted to say that real quick. That is a raw name. Whoever gave up Coruscant for Abaddon, whoa, what are we doing? Yo,
but yeah, that's what it's always been, like a lot of these inspirations. So it's really cool. When are you writing anything that's going to come out soon, or anything your
uh,
pitch want us to
well,
know about?
I have been working on, because the story that I'm working on, it's an entire universe that I'm trying to create as well, right? It's not just kind of writing something, unfortunately, but I like I said, I became a lore junkie, right? So that's how it all started, was me, like kind of like what you were just saying, that Brent, like that George Lucas did. I kind of did the same thing a little bit, but in my own way of just kind of going throughout my life. And the first manga that I read was Full Metal Alchemist, right? So I
Oh
freaking
yeah.
love, like, oh my goodness, like Full Metal Alchemist did something. That's another thing that changed me. Like, it changed me when I read that. Like, I had never dove into those depths, I guess you can say, before, of like character development or anything, like
Mm-hmm.
just, and actually understanding it. And then getting older and going back and reading it again, it was like, whoa, I didn't even understand this the first time I read it. And then watching the anime,
Right.
it's like, whoa, I didn't even understand it at all when I read it. Like, there's always the new thing to be found. And with that, I wanted to kind of create my own world of just all the, like, a lot of the things that I kind of liked in my own way, but wanted to put a little bit of a spin on these certain aspects, because it's like, that's kind of, I think, what creation is. You just kind of you get inspiration from the things that you've seen and the creators that you've watched. And I love Avatar: The Last Airbender as well. Like, Avatar: The
Yeah.
Last Airbender, another one of those things that kind of changed me. It's like, there are these key moments of media that I remember being like, whoa, like, okay, even though I'm a kid, this is for me as a kid for real. And they're not trying to baby me in the same way. Like, Avatar:
Yeah.
The Last Airbender was like, we got to see a lot of different stuff in that show as the characters grew. If that's the first thing you've ever seen like that, it's awesome, right? It's awesome. You're like, oh my gosh, the bending, the this, the that. There is always something more. And that's one thing that I love about just like the story that I've been trying to create, is creating this entire universe from the inception of it, and just trying to create not just the story that's going to be in it, like narratively, but also all of the other nuanced things that people will care about at some point,
Okay.
because I care about it. You know what I mean? So,
That's
um,
cool. Well,
yeah.
I would, and obviously, do your thing. But I will say, with George specifically, and even myself, because I do have a couple stories that I'm writing, but
Oh, we're gonna have to talk
I
after
can get
this.
I can get into
I know
kind
exactly
of
what you're
this
about to say.
paralysis, because you're like, I'm not even writing the story. I'm writing the story that leads to the story, and
Yeah, for
but
real.
you also have, George Lucas didn't have the prequels when he wrote the original trilogy.
Mm.
I know people like to say he did or pretend he did. He didn't have. Yes, and he named it, episode 4 when episode 5 came out.
Mm.
And he had an idea for what happened beforehand, and he had an idea for the characters. And what's funny, in the original drafts, like, Darth Vader was like a side, like, nothing character and stuff like that. He didn't think people would gravitate to that
Care
character
about
like
him
they
that
did.
much, yeah.
Uh, and some interesting things like that. And
Yeah.
it was just a story of, like, in the past, him and Luke's father wrestled and then sacrificed himself by them both jumping into a volcano, and then but the Vader character crawled out and survived. Yeah.
That's something I
And
found with
so
my
you
own
can,
writing, for real, is that like
yeah.
that right there is where I started my story. I realized, I was like, wait a minute, this isn't actually where the story starts. It's like, this is, there's information that comes before this, and there's information that comes after this, obviously. But it's like, leaning on the side of awesome is something that I try to do while also being conscious of how important it is for these characters to develop naturally and to not move them because they need to go a place. It's almost like a D&D game kind of, right? Like it's just so natural when like that's the best story is when it feels like a campaign of characters that are just getting together and making decisions because that's who they are. And that's one thing that I want to try to tackle in my own way as well. And I have an issue with kind of like when it comes to like when it comes to writing, I'm in every character's head. So I try not to write every character's things out, but it's very hard for me because I'm like, I know that this character is doing this or that character is doing that. So like while I'm telling the story, I guess it's called omnipotent. It's like an omnipotent narrator. That's kind of the vibe that I go for a little bit more, but I know people don't like that as well. And I want to grow my story from not being just a book, but I also want to like I'm talking to like comic book artists and all this other stuff, so I can kind of tell these stories in multifaceted ways, I guess you can say, because some people aren't gonna read a novel, right? Like that's just it. Like people aren't gonna read a novel, and I don't want those people that aren't gonna read a novel to miss out on it because I have family members that are never going to read a book in their life. But if I make a comic, they're going to read it for sure. And I don't want to be like, okay, well, you don't get to know about this thing that I created just because you're not going to read a book. Like, in my opinion, I'm going to make the media for the people that want it in that form because I'm going to the people as well. Like I don't want the people just to come to me. I want to go to you. It's like, what type of thing do you like? You want it in a comic? Well, here you go. You like mangas? Well, here you go. You like a graphic novel? Well, there you go. Like we can have all, like everybody can be happy. We can all eat. And I also want to tell these stories of these characters in those ways too. Like not just have this main storyline, but hey, that character sounds awesome. You want to know more about him? Well, there's a comic. It doesn't even, there's a comic just about that character for you if you want it. And then I like to be expansive with the things that I'm doing as well. So I try to listen to people that like stuff, like if you like something and you're like, hey, I like this. Okay, cool. Do you not like that? No, I'm always listening because it's the audience. It's the audience that creates everything. Without the audience, there would be no Marvel, there would be no Star Wars, there would be nothing. Like if people aren't receptive to the thing that you're trying to create, then there's going to be a lot of stoppage. There's going to be a lot of stops. I don't want to stop people from enjoying something. I want to help them enjoy it in the way that they like.
Keep the gates wide open. Yeah,
keep the gates open, but also understand that it's like you're going into an amusement park almost, right? Like what you're going to get into when you cross this door. I want you to know that once you cross this door, once you walk into this theater, you're in this world now. But my story is called Gifts, the Lands of Ghaphora. And in this story, universal properties basically are wielded like magic, you could say. So you have like power, reality, space, time, like all of those type of universal properties, but they're sanctioned to specific people, and not like specific people. And in this world, they're separated. They are basically segregated from, like, you can't intertwine with each other. Like if you have this universal property, you can't intertwine with these people over here. And of course there's reasons for all these things and so on and so forth. Right now I got alpha readers going in, like kind of reading some of the stuff just at an early stage, just because I'm trying to see how people kind of feel about it, especially because I'll be the first to say I'm not a writer. You know what I mean? Like that's something that I know about myself. It's not like I went to school to be a writer or anything like that. So I understand that there's a lot more for me to learn just about writing, period. So I try to be very open in every aspect.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I may have some people you might want to talk to.
Okay,
that can help with some things. So, but yeah, I think that about does it. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on yet that you want to make sure people know? And then also, once again, let us know where we can find you and all that good stuff.
Alrighty. I think the last thing, like, really, I think we've kind of covered a lot of it. I think I'm just really excited for the next episode. I hope that the next episode is not a flashback. I hope we don't get. I kind of want the next episode to pick up right where we left off and then go from there. But and I appreciate you for having me on here, man, and being able to talk to you about all this amazing stuff. And I haven't been able to talk to anybody really about nerd things like this, and this was an amazing thing, and I'd always be down to stop on by if you ever want me on by again. But
Yeah, for sure.
you can follow me on social media at Sensei Faneto. That's Sensei and then Faneto to stay up to date with all my thoughts, theories, and opinions on stuff. I partake in a whole bunch of slew of things: Star Wars, Marvel, all of the things like that. All things Marvel, everything pop culture. Check out Marvel Bros on YouTube and on all the social medias, MRVLBROS. And I just definitely appreciate you for having me on, bro.
Yeah, anytime. All right. Thank you so much for coming, and may the force be with you always.